We're now going to look at the use of a data dictionary for planning program metadata. Now, a data dictionary is a graphical tool for outlining a program's metadata. The tool assists in establishing items, such as variables, that will be contained within a program. Data dictionaries contain the headings of data item, data type, format, number of bytes for storage, size for display, description, example, and validation. The data item field is the name of the particular field within the program. So it may be an ID field or the first name of a person who is going to be using the software. The data type is the way the field will be recognized by the system. So our known data types such as integer for numbers, string for characters together, real for fractions and decimal point style numbers, and a Boolean for true or false types of entries. The format is the way data will be displayed by the system. So as we can see here, the day can be displayed in two types of formats. We can have day, month, year, or day, month, year. So one will say just 17 and the other year style will say 2017. The number of bytes of storage relates to how much hard disk space is required to save the data, but on the other side we have the size for display, which is the amount of RAM that is required to display the data on screen. The description is an outline of the type of data that is expected for the specific item, and then that is pretty much accompanied by an example, which is a sample of the expected data. So what an actual sample of data looks like when it's actually entered into this program. And finally is the validation, which are rules that can be applied to specific data items to ensure that the data is correct. So let's now take a look at an actual data dictionary. Across the top, you can see our 8 headings, okay, and we'll start with our data items. So this is for an online gaming store, and we believe we'll have a member ID, their first name and last name, date of birth, do they have a platinum membership, the subscription costs, and available game packs. For the member ID, the data type will likely be a string and its format will be X and then 6 ends after it. What that represents is that there will be a letter at the front followed by 6 numbers. Now that's 7 characters in total. So the number of bytes for storage is 7 and the size for display is also 7. Okay, the way it's stored and the way it's displayed is pretty much in the same format. An outline of what it is a unique identifier for a member. An example would be M123456, okay, and there's no validation rules applied to this actual item. The next two areas of first name and surname are pretty much the same, except they are strings that contain more characters, okay, because names, we're not sure how large these names will be. So we'll give 25 characters for first name, 25 characters for last name. Basically, the description states the obvious, first name of member and last name of member. An example is Scott for first name and Daniels for last name. The date of birth item, though, would be saved as a floating point data type, okay, with the date format. Okay, so it's going to be formatted in the way day, month, year. The number of bytes for storage is 4 because floating points are saved as 4 bytes, okay, and they save the capacity of 4 bytes. If it goes longer than the integer capacity, you'd have to save it as a double, which then would be 8 bytes. Okay, but in this case, it's 4 bytes for storage, but the size for display is 10 bytes. This is because if we actually look at the date format, for it to appear on screen, it needs to string together the characters of DD, which is 2, a slash, which is another character, MM, which is another 2 characters, another slash, and then 4 Ys. So if you actually count the characters, we've got 10 characters strung together, and that's why it is 10 characters for display, or 10 bytes for display. It's obviously the birth date of the member, and there's an example date there. And here as well, we have a validation rule. So the date has to be less than today, so the person has to basically be born, but also minus 15 years. They might need to be over 15 years of age to sign up for this online gaming service. Okay, so we have a validation rule there to ensure that correct data is entered in the system when typing in the date of birth. The platinum membership is a Boolean. Okay, and so we've got a single character reserved for this. So 1 byte for storage, 1 byte for display, and as you can see in the format, it's just a single X. This reflects, as you can see in the description, that it's going to be either true or false, but we're only going to be typing in T or F. Okay, so in order to reduce the file size of our program. The subscription cost, once again, is also a floating point, but this time in currency format. Okay, and as you can see as well, the cost based on the validation rule has to be less than $50 and greater than $0. This means the amount of dollars in the actual cost can't be greater than 2 digits. So what that means is the number of bytes for storage, once again, is 4 because it is a floating point and it reserves the amount once again, but the size for display can be no bigger than 6. Okay, once again, because there's only 4 numbers that are going to be included, but we've also got to include the special characters once again of the dollar sign and the decimal point. Okay, and in the example, as well as the format, you can see how it's going to be laid out. Dollar sign, the amount of dollars, dot, the amount of cents. And finally is the available game packs. This actual row, as you can see, is colored. This is because this item is an array, and it's going to be an array of string data. When you look at the number of bytes for storage, it's 25 characters times the number of games, as well as for the size of the display. Once again, 25 characters times the number of games. Okay, so to factor in that there could be a number of entries entered within the array, and all of those entries can't be larger than 25 characters, but it's reserved that space. It is the number of game packs, and an example would be the open world game pack. So I hope this video has given you a decent introduction into how a data dictionary is used when planning out our items in our program. Basically, we have our 8 headings of data item, data type, data format, number of bytes for storage, size for display, description, example, and validation. These actual headings allow us to plan what type of data is going to be going into our program, essentially what file sizes will all the data be, how the data will display on screen, and what validation rules will be used to make sure correct data will be entered into the data dictionary. It is useful for us to plan. It is also useful for other developers who are maybe working along with to understand in getting a better understanding of the system.